We're now going to make the hinge for our book, and to make the hinge I'm actually going to use the back of the cover of the little mini pad, because waste not want not, and that's what I thought I'd do. So for this book I'm going to do a stack the deck hinge system, because I just thought just something a bit different, so I use the stack the deck hinge system. So the first thing I need to do is to cut this at 4 inches, because that's how wide our pages are going to be, and then the first one is going to be 2 3/4 inches, and then the next one is going to be 2 inches, and the last one is going to be 1 1/2. Now that's not big enough. Let's see if this piece is here. Yes, this piece is here, so we need to cut this at 1 1/2. We need to do this 1 1/2 by 4. So there again, we've utilised the back cover of our mini pad to make our hinge, which is perfect, because I like to use everything up in these projects, and being a bit of a thrifty scrapbooker, I don't like to waste. So that's got a bit of white on the back, and I'm wondering if I can get that off. But that won't matter, because that's actually going to be inside the actual hinge itself. So let me just trim that down to 4 to start with. Make it a bit easier for myself. And if I get my craft knife, I can probably get those bits off. So let me just bring a craft knife in here. So as you can see, sometimes you need to think outside the box. If you haven't got the exact materials that I've got, don't think, oh, I can't do that project because I don't have that, or I haven't got that paper collection. You can. Just, sometimes you need to improvise a bit. Okay, so getting this piece off here. This is actually going to be inside 2 pages because it's 1/2 inch. But I'm just taking it off out of the way, because we then need to score these down. So for the stack the deck, you've got 3 pieces of cardstock, as we are making 6 hinges in total to take our book. So let me just pop my craft knife out of the way for safety reasons. It wasn't running out properly. Right, I'll pop that out of the way. So bring our scoreboard in, and we're going to score in at 1/2 inch on both ends. So I'm using my ball score tool here. As you know, it's the wide ball one, so it doesn't actually go in the rivets or in the ridges, so it won't tear my paper stock. Okay. So just score in at 1/2 inch on the 2 ends of each of your 3 pieces of paper. As you can see, I'm double scoring here, because this is particularly, being the back of the mini pad, it's quite a strong board. Okay, so that's all those done. So now we need to burnish these fold lines to make our hinge. Again on that one. Just take your time when burnishing these. It will pay off in the end, because the more movement you've got on the hinges, the better it is for the book. As you can see, this is where I had that white bit stuck, but that's not going to show because that's inside the hinge. That's perfect. Okay, now before I attach all this, I'm just going to mitre slightly my corners. Let me take that bit out of the way. I'm not going in a lot, I'm just mitering them just a little bit, just so when we attach the pages you won't see any little bits that may stick out. So good idea to do it at this time before you attach them. Don't have to, it's personal preference, but just find it sits nicer when the book comes together. Now to make the cover of my book, I'm actually going to use yet another 8x8 card because I didn't have any craft cardstock left. So actually I'm using 7 8x8 cards, but that's not a problem at all. So I need to get these now stuck in. So let me bring some tape in here. I'm going to use double-sided tape for this. I've got a mixture of red and ordinary, obviously depending on what width you've got. I'm just sort of measuring that up. That's perfect for that, so I'll use a piece of that. I'm not being too precious about the tape. The double-sided tape I've got is quite strong, so I'm quite happy to use the plain double-sided or the red, it doesn't matter. If you're concerned at all that obviously you don't want your book to fall apart, I would go ahead and use red. I've got some nice wide, really strong tape here as well. So I'm going to put that on here, but I'll have to double tape this because it's not quite enough. Putting my tape on these ready. I'm not going to take the backs of these off yet because I'm going to cut another piece of card just to make an attachment on that. Now let's take this one off. There's my craft knife because it's not quite wide enough, so I'm going to need an extra piece, which I'll probably use a bit of this one as this one's running low. Just get away with that on there. I'll use the end of that up for me. So this is the middle one I'm doing at the moment. I'm going all a bit back to front, but if you haven't used the stack deck hinge system before, I have done a tutorial on the stack the deck and the hidden hinge system, so if you're not familiar with it, do not worry. But I'm just turning the glue up at the top here just so you can see where it's going to go. You need to line it up as to where you're going to have it. Now I'm going to obviously eyeball, but if you're not confident to eyeball, do take your time and measure it up. That's not quite where I want it to be. So just checking that. Yep, that's happened. Happy with that. Burnish that down. Okay, so that's that one in. So that's one hinge there and another one there. And we need to put the middle one in now. So take the backing off this as well. That being in the right place. So I'm just going to take that up and do it again. As I say, just take your time with lining this up. If you want to measure it and put some pencil lines, that's perfectly okay as well. Yeah, happy with that now. So that's our hinges. So as I say, the more you burnish them, the easier the book will move when we come to use it. Now another thing I'm going to do as well to reinforce this is I've had a lot of people get in touch about the American ladies using tie-back to reinforce their spines. You can use tie-back if you want. Personally I don't, I just use an extra piece of cardstock. I find it's a lot easier and a lot cheaper. So I'm going to put an extra piece on the back here. So I've cut my cover, as I say, out of another 8x8 card. I've cut to cover and I've gone 4.5 inches this time, because obviously I want to allow 1/2 inch in on all the sides for my cover. So I've got this strip left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this strip to here, but giving myself a little 1/4 inch each side before the main cover, and then that way these outside pieces like that page, which being December would go there, has still got room because it's still quite bulky. So you don't want it with the cover right bang next to it, you need to have a little bit of a gap. So I'm going to allow for a bit of a gap. So let me just cut this. So this is measuring 1 3/4. So let's do that at 2 1/4 by 4. So we're going 2 1/4 by 4 inches. So 4.5 inches, sorry. So 4.5 inches is the cover. So I'm going to go in 2 1/4. But actually my hinge is only going to be 4, isn't it? So I actually only need it 4 inches high. So yes, so let's cut that down to 4. So sorry people, to recap then, it's going to be 4 inches by 2 1/4 inches. And this will just give us a little bit more reinforcement on the spine, and also will give us a gap each side to allow for that page on the outside there. So we can now take the backing off here. Tuck your ends in if you've got any. Okay, so I'm just going to line this up now again. Concentrating. Right, yes, I'm happy with that there now. Right, so I'm just going to press that all down. Okay, so that just reinforces our piece of the spine. And if you've got any little bits of double-sided tape that are sticking up, take them off at this stage. Right, now we're going to make our cover for all this to go in. As I say, I cut my piece of cardstock 4.5 inches. So the covers are going to be 4.5 inches. Then I need to attach this. So I'm hoping by attaching that there, that's going to bring the measurement to 2.5. So then I need 4.5 on top of that. So that's 6, 7 inches. So I have got enough, which is perfect. So that's perfect. That will fit on there really nicely. So I can feel confident that I can cut that. So I'm just going to put a little line on here, because obviously that needs to then score at 2.5. Now, as you know, I've made a leather faux effect cover for this, which also needs attaching to this. I'm just scoring this at 2.5. I'm going to do it again on the other side as well. Now, then we can cut the rest of our paper. I'm just going to go in again and do this other side. So yes, we're going to attach our faux leather cover to this. So you can attach your faux leather covers to fabric. That makes it look really nice, but I'm going to do it to my craft card, because then it keeps the same with the album that I'm doing at this moment in time. So that's going to be my cover. That's my hinge system that's going to go into side here. So I now need to cut these pages down to 4.5. So I'm going to just take those in my paper trimmer. And these need to be trimmed down to 4.5 inches. So it's been quite good that I've used 7 of these 8x8 cards. So if you can't get hold of 12x12 cardstock, not a problem with this project, you don't need to. So for those of you that can't get to the craft store, that's not a problem. If you can, all well and good. So by just picking up a pack of cards from online or craft store or craft fair, you can still make this mini albums. That's my cover. That's my hinge. And then this is my faux leather. Let's just bring this down now, see what that's looking like. As you can see, that's drying off nicely now. It's nearly dry. It's not quite dry. I'd like it really bone dry. It's probably best left overnight. And then what we're going to do with this is going to be stuck to this, which is just going to fit, which is absolutely perfect. Because as you can see, that was 12 inches in width, wasn't it? We cut that by 12 by 6, but as you can see, where it has actually dried with having the glycerin and water added, it's shrunk down to 11.5 by just under 6, so it has shrunk down a little bit. So you need to bear that in mind. So I would suggest, if you're going to use this as a cover for a project, I would make it bigger than what you need, because you can always trim it down, but once you've made it, your cover, you can't sort of add it on. So I feel happy that I can then attach that to there. This will all be trimmed off and inked, and then I can attach my hinge and attach my pages. So I'm just going to let this dry a little bit longer now. It's nearly there. I'm just drying it naturally. I'm not forcing the drying at all. It's just been drying in the room here with me. So it's not quite dry yet. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit longer, and then I'll come back to you and we will go ahead and assemble all our book. See you in a minute. We're now going to make the cover for our book. So as you know, we cut the cardstock, and what I've done is I've gone ahead and inked just on the one side. This is going to be the inside cover of my book. I also made some faux leather covering that I've made out of craft cardstock. This is a piece of ordinary craft cardstock, believe it or not. This was 6x12, this piece. And what I've gone ahead to make this is I've spritzed it with some glycerin and water mix several times, soaked the paper through, screwed it up, unravelled it, done it again, and then inked over with some distress ink. I have done a small video on that, so if you're interested to know how to make the cover for that, there's a link here, and then you can put that in, and then you'll be able to see how to make that video, that cover. So I've just made it a sort of a leather look cover, because just for something a bit different really. I've seen Sheena Douglas do it on Create and Craft, and I thought it looked quite nice. I thought I'd use it for this album. So what you're going to do is make that as the outside cover. That's going to be my inside cover. But to also make it a bit more sturdy, because obviously this is only paper stock, what I've gone ahead and done is I've cut some, this is mount board, but you can use chipboard. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that's going to be the outside cover. I'm going to flip this over, and in between I'm going to stick this, purely just to give it a bit more stability. I've inked around the edges, so if you see it, I've left gaps, because obviously that's where the hinge is, or where the book's going to fold together. So in a way, it's just a cheap's version, or a cheap's version of making the mount board covers again. We've done the cereal packet one. You could use a cereal packet on this album, that's absolutely fine, because we're going to use a stack the deck hinge system that we made. So you could use a cereal packet if you wanted to. I couldn't find anything the right width that I needed for my book, and that's why I'm going to go on this route. So the first thing I'm going to do is to stick this down. So get this all stuck on. I'm just using the Kalal all-purpose glue here. I'm going as close up to the edge as I can. It will squidge out a bit as well, so not to worry too much there. So as I say, I'm going to stick it. I've cut my backboard the same colour, same size, but I've left the gaps for the hinge because obviously I still want it to fold together as a book. So take that right up to there. I'm just going to flip that over, give that a little rub down. Happy with that. Do the same on here. So you could do it all mount board if you wanted to. You could use cereal packet if you wanted to. The choice is entirely yours. So I'm just sort of showing you a quick cheats way. That one looks a little bit long, but that's not a problem. Of another way of making your covers a bit more sturdy. So it's always good to have different ideas up your sleeve if you wanted to try something new. Like I'm trying the faux leather look here today, that's new, but of course I needed a bit more stability with what I was doing to achieve that. So I'm just going to flip that over. As I can see, that one's a bit too big, but I can trim that down, that is not a problem. So this is going to be the inside of my book. So when it's folded up, that's what it's going to look like. So these boards are all on the going to be sandwiched between this and the cover. Okay, so obviously because I've used wet glue, it does need to take a little time to dry out. So let me just trim that piece off there. I haven't made that quite the right size. If you haven't got any mount board, again, you could still use cereal packet to make these boards, just to give a bit more stability to your books. There's nothing wrong with using everyday household products like that at all. I think it's just a great way of recycling. So as you see, I've got gaps in between for where it's going to fold over like that. But I'm just going to allow that just to dry off a minute, because then what we're going to do is we're going to then glue that onto here and let that dry off a bit before I then trim the edges. Now, with this leather look faux leather cover you've done, it does shrink obviously where you're doing it. Sheila Douglas did put hers through an embossing folder as well, which helps to stretch it out, but I haven't. I've literally done mine, screwed it up, let it dry so it's thoroughly dry overnight, and then if you look, it's got a sheen to it, and to get the sheen on this I've sprayed it with some Crafter's Companion Spray and Shine. That gives it a nice sheen, but it also then protects your cover, because obviously you've used the glycerin, you've used the distress ink, and obviously you don't want loads of distress ink etc coming off on your hands. So that's what I've done there. But before we go ahead and attach this, I want to add a couple of little embellishments to mine before we attach it to here, because I don't want this to show. I've got a nice little sort of isn't that called name plaques, aren't there? And I'm going to put the date behind there. So I've got a couple of brads here, so I'm going to attach this. Find my couple of little brads, they're just there. So we can get those attached. The other thing I also wanted to attach at this stage before we glue down is I've got some little brads here that have got screws on them. And I thought these would look quite nice in the corners of the book to give it another different feel really. And then I've also gone ahead, I've got a little embellishment of a clock here, because this is like placing time, remembering dates for birthdays etc. I thought I might hang this from either the spine of the book or even the front of the book, just to give it another different little twist on there really. Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and get these pieces added before we attach that main cover to our board cover there. So while that's all drying off, that can be done. I'm going to bring that down back there. I'm trying to line it up. This is all going a bit eyeball because obviously I'm cutting this paper down afterwards, so I'm just winging it here today. So I'll get my little brads on. I'll just put this tool away before I go and poke it through my fingers. So by adding it like this first as well, you're hiding the back of your brads and you're not actually going to see them on the inside of the book, because we're not going to be putting any more cover on this book on the inside. So that can go on there, and bring the other one in. This metal plate was a silver colour. I just picked it up from the pound store. You got 4 for £1, and I've just coloured it up with some treasured golds. As a lot of you know, I like my treasured golds. And that thread's broken. Let me try and get another one in there. That's a shame. See if I've got another one in that colour. I think I have somewhere. All out prepared, didn't anticipate actually breaking one, so get another one out of my crafty stash here. Right. And then also, to give this a bit more stability, now the brad is through, so it doesn't tear, because of course this faux paper is quite fragile now, so to give that a little bit more stability as well, I'm going to stick a bit of tape over it, just to hopefully stop it tearing. It shouldn't tear, but I think it's worth belt and braces sometimes to have things finished off nicely. Okay, that's that. So then that looks nice on there. I was thinking of putting these on these sort of corners here of the book. I'm just wondering if it's going to be too much or not, so I'm just going to lay them out. This is the stage where it's a good idea to lay things out like this, and then you can get a feel for what things are going to be like. I know this is the inside of the book, but I'm just getting a feel then for what it's going to look like. So that might be too much on there, but I could bring that on this middle piece, on this front piece here, because I'm not quite sure the extra decoration and things I'm going to put on here, so I might do that on there. So what I'm going to do is this: get my crocodile, and I'm going to put an eyelet to hang my chain through. I've only got a black eyelet. I'm just thinking whether I hang it through there, it's got to hang through over the top, so that might not be a good idea. Let's just have a little think here. So I've got to have 2. Because if I have one, it's got to hang outside as well. But I might leave that for now and have a think on that one. I think I'm going to go ahead and put my little screws through. So let's put the crocodile to one side for now. That out of the way. What I've done is, with this again already, is I've done my score lines as to where these are going to go, where this part of the book is going to fold. So I've got a rough sort of guesstimation as to where things are going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this on top, because obviously I want to cut round this. So if I lay it on top, in fact I could just slightly fold it over so I get my holes in the right place. And I could do it like that as well, and that gives me a real feel for where they're going to be. And I could go, I might mark it actually with a pen. Get a pro marker out here. I might just make a little mark hole with a pen. It's also giving me a feel for where this plate is going to end up. It's going to end up quite low, so I might move that down a little bit. Bring that down just a tad. Pen's totally fallen apart now, completely. That's better. Right. So, put a mark. I'm just eyeballing here. obviously when you're doing yours you can take more time. To come up a bit bright. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to make some more holes now to attach these. What you can do at this stage as well is you can just firm things as straight. That's 2, 3, 4. That through there. Gives a little bit of a different look to the book because the book's on craft cardstock and it's got quite a vintage feel. It just gives a nice added twist to that. Okay, what I will do now is make sure these are turned the right way so they don't interfere with the spine. That's something else you may want to consider if you're doing it. And I'm going to do like I've done before. I'm just going to add a little bit of tape just over these, just so it helps the book not to tear. Now I know a lot of the ladies in the US use tie-back. I've had a lot of questions about that. You can buy tie-back in the UK here. Get it on Amazon and other stationery stores, and what it is basically, it's a very sticky clear adhesive sheet, very similar to sort of duct tape but on a sort of big sheet, so you can use that to stick over to give a bit more protection to help with wear and tear if you wish, but it's totally a personal preference thing. So I've not used it because I've added the extra board here which will give a bit more protection, and also on my spine I've put an extra back plate here to my spine as well, so I don't really need it on this book at all. I'm now going to go ahead and attach this cover to this cover so it can start gluing and the glue can start coming off. Press these down a bit nice and flat. That's the trouble with working with something like this, it's not totally flat, so it is a bit harder, but just take your time if it's something you wanted to have a go at. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up first and do some pencil lines, and then I know where I'm setting my glue to really. So I've done some hinge marks already. This is where I just take a little bit of time with covering this, so this isn't quite as easy as the cereal box cover, so if you thought this was a bit fiddly you can just do a cereal box cover. That is perfectly alright, that is not a problem at all. Just need to come down a little bit more. I'm just looking where the studs are that I've put on the corner, and also looking where the nameplate is. So I'm happy with that position now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself some little marks with my pen again, because this is going to be cut off, so it's not a problem, because we're going to trim this right down, but it needs to glue and the glue needs to take off first. The other thing I might do is while I'm holding it firm in its place here is actually lift apart and glue it, and then we carry on. So what I should do is I'm putting loads of adhesive. I'm putting a lot of this. I'm using the Cal again, personally, because it glues everything. I've even glued the kitchen worktop down with it, so it's brilliant for that type of thing. You can use PVA glue, that's adequate as well, that's not a problem. Don't put too much glue where your actual spine's going to be. I'm going right up to the edge, as you can see, but not going on the actual where it folds, if you like. So I've smothered that in glue. Okay, that's all glued up. I'm now going to lay that down. Okay, so I've got a bit of pressure on there, and then what I'm going to do is turn it so I can do the next bit, because I'm working this way around, which is easier for me. I'm going to lift it back now and we'll do the spine. So same again, lots of glue. Go right up to the edges. We're trimming round this once it's all dry, so do not worry. It does just needs a little time to take off this glue, that's the only thing. But we can do this while we're prepping the next part of our book. You have to put a bit more pressure on this one because we've got the brad sticking up, remember. And then the last piece is here. So I hope you're enjoying these tutorials. This is just giving you another way again of covering a book or covering one of your mini albums. So it's quite nice to have lots of different ideas when you're doing these projects, and then you can find the one that suits you best and the one that you find more suitable for the project that you're doing at the time. So I'm just going to flip this over a minute, and I'm just going to press this all down. Just needs to have some time for this glue to take off. I'm just going to bend it. It bends quite fine. This isn't tearing at all. That's absolutely fine. Okay, because this spray and shine will protect it as well. So I'm quite happy with that. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that aside with some books on it, just so that can dry off, and then we can start putting our pages together.